I'm Matt Smith. Right now on Up Front. Deadly parade shooting, and now the growing connection to Wisconsin. The plot unfolding for a potential second attack in our state's capital. Do you have a nervousness in your stomach?
Yes. I think every mayor is worried.
Madison's mayor is here. The new details, the new calls for action, and the growing debate about who's culpable. Ballot box ruling, the Supreme Court weighing in just weeks ahead of the primary. The new reaction and the political fallout unfolding at this hour. And the president's upcoming trip to Saudi Arabia, now just days away, and the major money on the line here in Wisconsin.
Taking on the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Matt Smith. The investigation still unfolding this weekend into the deadly 4th of July parade shooting in Highland Park, Illinois, and now its growing connection to Wisconsin. The accused gunman, 21-year-old Robert Crimo III, being held without bond, now facing 7 counts of first-degree murder. And the charges prosecutors say may not end there. Investigators revealing new details about Robert Crimo's trip into Wisconsin, just hours after they say he stood atop a local business in Highland Park and fired an assault rifle into the crowd.
It appears when he drove to Madison, he was driving around. However, he did see a celebration that was occurring in Madison, and he seriously contemplated using the firearm he had in his vehicle to commit another shooting.
In Madison?
In Madison.
Did he admit to all of that?
I don't want to get into specifics about what he said in the interview and what he didn't say in the interview or what he admitted to and not.
The FBI this past week recovering the suspected gunman's phone at this auto repair shop in Middleton.
So I just walked up here afterwards after they came and said they found it.
Owner Jim Lund showing us where FBI agents recovered the phone in a pile of dirt on the edge of his property.
It's just unbelievable, and it's kind of scary, that he was right here after that. What was he planning on doing? Who knows?
The FBI this weekend still investigating his hours in Wisconsin. Amidst that, we met with Madison's mayor, Sadia Rhodes Conway, near the Capitol. Have you learned any more about the suspected gunman's time here in the city and what that looked like?
We don't have a lot of details about that, but that is something that I believe the FBI is looking at and trying to establish a timeline and what he was doing when. We did get notified via law enforcement, via the FBI, that he was potentially in Madison. Of course, we mobilized to support the FBI. By the time we were waiting for more direction from them, by the time that came, it was, they've actually already arrested him in Highland Park, which was a relief for us, and I guess for everyone concerned. I'm not able to share anything more about details at this point, but I know that the FBI is looking into it.
Is it fair to say you have learned more details and just the FBI can't share publicly yet?
There's a few more things that we're not able to share yet.
On Monday night, when the FBI notified you, it was a short window between mobilization and his arrest. In that short window, were there conversations and plans in place for the what if he is still here and has a weapon? Well,
the unfortunate thing is that we plan for this on a regular basis. And not just the City of Madison, Madison Police Department, Madison Fire Department, but other institutions here in Madison. We have drills. We do tabletop exercises, and believe me, we'll be doing more of them. But to me, that's the sad fact of today, is that we are training, we are planning, we are preparing. Our law enforcement folks are thinking about large events and the staffing that's needed for them. Will we do more of that now? Yes, of course.
Given what authorities have told us and given what you know, how close was this city to having this alleged gunman stop and get out of his car and start shooting?
I think we were very close. And I think the idea that the only thing standing between Madison and a mass shooting was the mindset of the shooter is very scary. That should not be our only protection.
It's no secret you'd like to see assault rifles banned across the state and across the country. When you look at what's developed in this case, is this more of a case of signs missed, of a red flag law in Illinois perhaps not enforced or not used properly, and perhaps a gunman who, if the proper procedures were put in place, wouldn't have had a gun in the first place?
So this is a case where I think you need multiple solutions and multiple barriers to somebody who is this disturbed and angry getting a weapon that can kill dozens of people. And so yes, should there be stronger red flag laws? Absolutely. Should there be an assault weapons ban? Absolutely. Should we be thinking about better access to mental health care? Absolutely. Should we be trying to figure out and catch people who have these extreme opinions and predilection to violence before they get there? Absolutely. But there isn't one thing that's going to solve this in America. We need a whole series of common sense gun safety laws, and it has to happen at the federal level.
You acknowledge, I'm assuming, an assault weapon ban at the federal level at this point seems impossible?
Unfortunately, I don't see a path towards that. But I hold out hope that at some point, the people who oppose such a thing will come to their collective senses before more people have to die in our communities.
The suspect's father now pushing back at any accusations of culpability after sponsoring his son's application for a gun permit. Illinois State Police now say they're investigating that. Prosecutors not ruling out the potential for criminal charges.
I don't want to comment on that. I don't want to answer that question right now in terms of what our work continues to be to look at all of the information and evidence in this case.
Dan Adams is a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Dan, good to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Good to see you.
How likely is it from everything we've seen that the father could actually face criminal charges, given what investigators and even prosecutors have seemed to lay out in the last couple of days?
Well, I don't think it's very likely. There's a tenet in criminal law that we can't really go back in time and do kind of thought police, what somebody should have known about somebody else's actions. Generally, if he aided or abetted or conspired in any way with his son, knowing that his son was going to do this atrocious act, he would have criminal liability. But a bad feeling, a little suspicion, that itself doesn't rise to the level of criminality.
So we have this separate recent case in Michigan as well. The parents of an accused school shooter now facing involuntary manslaughter charges themselves, the parents. Here in Wisconsin, under our current laws, could there be similar charges in a similar incident?
You know, unfortunately, no. The Michigan case is interesting because that was a minor, and that minor was repeatedly expressing that he wanted to do some really bad things, and the parents gave him access to firearms. So they have kind of a negligence theory there under their manslaughter law. It's still a novel prosecution, don't get me wrong. Here in Wisconsin, we just don't have anything like that. You can contribute to a minor committing a crime. That's a crime for an adult to do. Buying a gun for a minor that's going to use it unsupervised is criminal here in Wisconsin. But just kind of having a suspicion or having a bad feeling about what's going on and not reporting it, that's not a crime.
When we look at Illinois, and if prosecutors do decide to file criminal charges, how much of a precedence will that case set, and how closely will that be watched?
Well, I think all of us who see what happened are so outraged. We want somebody to be held accountable for this. And so I think that the elected prosecutors down there, and certainly the governor, want some pressure to be placed on the parents, and maybe this will be a test case. In terms of a successful prosecution, I just don't see it at this juncture.
All right, Dan Adams, criminal defense attorney. Dan, thanks so much for your time.
You bet.
Coming up, the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruling, the future of ballot drop boxes in Wisconsin, the new reaction and analysis next.